WhatsApp number to send your messages to is 0809 444 981. You can also tweet at smooth981, and we're also streaming the show live on our YouTube channel, so you can catch that live stream. We have a guest joining us this morning.
And our guest is Boboye Olaolu. He's of the head macroeconomics research Cardinalstone. Good morning to you.
Good morning, compliment of the season, and thanks for having me.
All right, you in opening you had said, well, housing in itself looks like a very good business to plow your money into because it never stops giving. It's just a gift that keeps on giving. But we understand you are giving out house keys today, so please let's know how we can get ours by digging into this one, because it states that the housing ministry in Nigeria plans about 100,000 homes across the country. Is this like a cube of sugar dropped into the Lagos Lagoon? Walk us through this in Nigeria, because we have an estimated 17 million to 34 million housing deficit. Can building 100,000 homes across the country make any form of difference?
Okay, good morning once again. So firstly, it's a welcoming development that the government is thinking about how to improve housing situation in the country and how to consciously provide or reduce housing deficits. However, when we assess the adequacy of that 100,000 housing units, it's clear and obvious that Nigeria needs more, given the fact that we have about 28 million deficit in the country. According to the estimate of the CBN, for Nigeria to be able to be self-sufficient, to have no deficit, Nigeria will have to build a minimum of 700,000 houses per year. And Nigeria will need to spend, over almost 60 trillion naira, to be able to achieve that. So clearly, this is far off from what Nigeria needs, but at least they're taking a conscious step, which we basically will like, and we think that from there they can do more.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Boboye. Speaking about building, we can't talk about building without talking about the materials. Nigeria definitely does a lot of importation when it comes to these building materials. Can you speak about the impact of the currency devaluation on this sector, the construction subsector?
Yes. So the construction sector is extremely heavy on importation. Currently, the imports about 75% to about 90% of the entire material needed in that sector. And we discovered that cumulatively, the construction sector requires or uses a minimum of $3 billion annually, right? And because the sector is a growing sector, the rate at which the demand for FX continues to jump materially. So take, for example, in 2021, the total FX need for that sector was about $1.7 billion. In 2022, it's about $3 billion. In 2023, we are looking at somewhere at around 3.4 to $4 billion. So clearly, the FX need for that sector is big. And the fact that housing continues to the prices continues to go up. So the FX devaluation is not good for their business. The pass-through leads to higher housing costs, makes it very difficult for builders to even consider a single-digit interest rate when they want to consider mortgage. So clearly, the devaluation is not helping matters. It's worsening things. However, what that devaluation then provides is opportunity for house builders and developers to look at internal materials. We still have, materials that can be used domestically. Is it sufficient? It might not be. However, it can be explored, which can ease the importation level.
I like the way that the final submission you made, but that in itself will begin to lead us to how affordable are really low cost, because we've heard of these terms most often than not being bandied around, low cost housing. Could that really be the alternative, the route to go to get us to providing enough housing for Nigerians?
So, we have to consider every possible options, when we're exploring providing housing for Nigerians. What can we do? The one you mentioned, can we look at mortgage, a single digit mortgage? Can we look at providing them with loan? depending, we have to look at different options that can afford an average Nigerians to get house. If you take, for example, a few people that have gone to UK, the next thing you see in 2 years, in 3 years, they'll be like, oh, we've gotten our houses, whether it's on mortgage or fully paid for, they have an house. But an average person working in Lagos, for example, which is the most industrialized state in the country, will practically have to work for a minimum of maybe 10 years, and you're earning pretty much well for you to be able to even afford a good apartment that you can buy, not even an entire owning an entire building, not just owning an apartment within a block of building. So clearly, Nigeria can explore every possible options to achieve that.
Let's let the listener and the client know at this moment, talking about affordable housing for Nigerians. That's in relation to the Housing Ministry plans 100,000 homes across the country. We'd like to know what your thoughts are in this regard. Please send your WhatsApp messages to 0809 4440981 will be where we'll love to read the messages coming through.
All right, so taking together currency devaluation and inflation, are any affordable housing plans in Nigeria completely realistic?
Yes, it's realistic. It's first, fundamental challenges or fundamental issues needs to be tackled. Issues of FX, issues of inflation. A research by the IMF, they tried to look at 30-year data in Nigeria to see the biggest driver of inflation. They discovered that it's coming from large money supply in the economy, right? Aside from that, because of FX devaluation, about 25% of it is coming from FX devaluation. So if we have a situation where the CBN is able to manage the currency, and we can see currency stability. Let's see currency, if you go back to 2019, 2018, where currency was materially stable, for almost 14 months. If you have that kind of stability, the pass-through to inflation is beneficiary. So if those two things can be tackled, then we can be seeing maybe inflation close to the long run average of about 14 to 16%. Monthly, why maybe annually rather, why maybe we could see a bit of appreciation in the parallel market or maybe stability of the FX at current levels. That will give builders, how to you give them knowledge on how to plan themselves, because many of them from the interviews that was granted, many of them claim that they cannot even meet their budget annually. Their budgets keep changing because once they plan at the start of the year, before the end of the year, you've seen the material devaluation, you've seen prices jump. They have to raise supplementary budgets just to be able to achieve their aim. So those fundamental issues need to be tackled before we can have good housing. And lastly, if you look at countries where mortgage is cheap, houses are very affordable, like Sweden, Finland, Japan, and the likes, their interest rate is materially low. Single digits, close to 2%, even materially lower than 2%.
This just so we can close up this conversation on housing and move on to power issues before we let you go this morning to unbox your gift under the tree. Let's see what the interest rate, as you mentioned, is quite high, and now it's about getting these monies to invest in the real estate sector of the country. How can Nigeria have a thriving mortgage market when rates are so high?
Yes, it's difficult, to have a good mortgage market when things are high. So first, interest rates will need to come down. Interest rates will mirror inflation. Inflation will need to come down, maybe close to single digits or maybe close to the long run average, like I mentioned. Interest rates will need to also be be lower. Maybe you have single digit interest rate environment. That will mean that if you take mortgage, maybe you can be paying less than 10%, and then you can have a good mortgage system where people can borrow or take mortgage for about 20 years or even 30 years. At the moment, when you go around and you sample people that offer mortgage opportunities, you'll be shocked about the ridiculous amount of interest rate that they are demanding for. So people are demanding for more than 20%, from what I've seen on different websites. Maybe the cheapest is the Federal Mortgage Bank. So clearly, interest rates will need to come down before people can even look at taking up those interest rates. And also, income situation will need to improve, because if you look at an average Nigerian, is firstly to meet the basic needs before considering houses. We spend about 50 to 55% of income in the country today on food. So basically, that's just survival. People are just trying to survive. Someone who's trying to survive would think less of owning a house.
So Taya has just leaves us with some observation, a very short one. He says, I guess it's going to be take more than a while becoming a property owner with all these observations and industry dynamics. That's his fear right now. And that feeds into the fact, talking about these high interest rates to get buildings and then sending it out. The practicality is when you get to landlord and tenants, can there ever be a regulation where you don't have every year the rents keep going up?
Yes. So, normally for one of the things I ask if I'm switching apartments, first thing I ask the caretaker is, hey, come, it should take 3 years before you adjust prices. Do we have that? Because that is the standard. But because of material jump in inflation, inflation at the moment is currently the highest that we've seen since 2005. And that point is also the highest, the 2005 and current inflation, that the highest since 1996. So clearly we are looking at 27-year high inflation. Landlords have had to also raise prices. Everything inches on inflation. If you have stability in consumer prices, maybe double digits or slightly above double digits, maybe about 12%, then the impetus to increase prices, abnormally can be contained, can be managed. Then there could also be regulations, but regulations must also consider both parties, the house owner, the tenant, and everybody. It has to be favorable for all the parties involved.
All right, let's move slightly away from this and let's talk power. Solar mini grids, the rural electrification project, plans for it. Is solar the way forward?
So, interestingly, right, between this year alone, right, we've seen the consciousness and the awareness about solar and alternative electricity sourcing rapidly increasing, especially when PMS is being sold for over 600. You find it difficult that most Nigerians can't afford that. So clearly, people are looking for alternative. And when you look at the fact that more than 40% of Nigerians don't have access to electricity at all, this is materially higher than what you see in the likes of Egypt, which everybody has light, 100%, compared to Ghana also, where only about 14% of the population don't have light. Even in Kenya, just about 23% of the population don't have access to light. But in Nigeria, about 90 million, about 40% of the entire country don't have access to light. So Nigerians looking for alternative is clearly a good one. Now, when you look at the cost of solar and cost of alternative electricity, it looks favorable, it looks cheap. If you look at the cost of running a gen from January to December, and you compare it to cost of buying a mini solar that can at least power the basic things in your house, like your TV, to charge your phones and your fans, basically you will see that being aware and trying to look at solar might be a good one.
Well, we've come to the end of the conversation this morning. We really wish we could keep you more because there are still so many issues to raise, like such as, is it that the power situation in Nigeria is one where people getting in these generators in the country would go out of business if we have stable electricity supply? So it's like a cartel. Make sure power doesn't work in Nigeria.
Yeah, so it's clearly, for in achieving economic benefits, right? There will always be times that some set of people or some group of people will have to pay some sacrifices. People that import gen or who have been in gen business for over the years might have to struggle, given the fact that we're trying to push for improved electricity. But it could also be a time to diversify, because in business cycle, we get to a point when business gets to maturity and then you start looking for alternative ways. At that point, the possibility of material increase in business growth is a bit constrained. So if gen is not the way forward, it might be to become a distributor or an importer of solar. It could also be maybe to become a manufacturer locally, how to produce these inverters, solar panels locally, and other sources of electricity, that the country can use for. At the end of the day, it benefits the population, it benefits everybody, and everybody's happy. It's a win-win situation.
All right, thank you very much. Throw the final thoughts in from Tyre this morning, and he goes up with this one, just musing out loud. He says, is there such a thing like 7-year mortgage? Because crazy things are happening. That's what he says. He waxes terms some way in this regard. But I want to say thank you so much to you, Boboye Olaolu, of the head macroeconomic research, Cardinalstone, for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Merry Christmas once again.
That is it for Business Express. Thanks for staying with us. The show